Did you know that for the ordinary people of Rome, the Colosseum was not only a place of blood and spectacle, but also a place of ritual, of waiting, of dust, of bread, and of whispers? We usually imagine roaring crowds, emperors in golden seats, and gladiators battling beneath the sun. But what if I told you that the real story was softer, slower, and stranger? That before the clash of swords, there was the sound of sandals scuffing on stone, the smell of bread carried by vendors, and the nervous laughter of families who had walked since dawn to claim their seats. What did it really feel like to be one of those nameless faces in the crowd, an ordinary Roman who had chores at home, neighbours to gossip with, and worries about tomorrow's rent, yet who found themselves drawn into this massive theatre of stone? Tonight, let us wander slowly into that world. Not as emperors, not as gladiators, but as the quiet souls who sat on the hard marble benches, squinting against the sun, waiting for the day's strange drama to unfold. And as you listen, you may find yourself asking, what would I have seen? What would I have felt if I too had been there? The morning begins in Rome, not with trumpets or ceremony, but with the ordinary hum of daily life. The sun has only just begun to stretch its light over the tiled rooftops, painting them in shades of pale gold and pink. The streets are alive with movement, though not yet crowded. Somewhere, a baker opens his shop, the smell of warm loaves drifting through the narrow alleys. Somewhere else, a woman draws water from a public fountain, her clay jug heavy in her arms. And somewhere, perhaps only a short walk away, a father shakes his son gently awake, whispering that today is the day. The games are on. The boy rubs his eyes, not fully awake, but the words are enough to stir excitement in him. For days, he has heard neighbours talk about it. For days, men in taverns have argued about which gladiator will win, and who among the beasts will be the most terrifying. But for the boy, the games mean something simpler. It means a day away from chores. It means sitting with his father and mother in the great amphitheatre, eating figs, feeling the stone beneath him, and watching something grand and strange. They leave their home early, before the streets are too thick with people. The Colosseum is a long walk, and the best seats are claimed by those who arrive first. Their sandals slap softly against the stones of the road. Along the way, they are joined by others, neighbours, acquaintances, strangers who nod politely as they fall into the same direction, all flowing towards the same destination. The Colosseum rises before them gradually, at first glimpsed only in fragments, its outer arches peeking over rooftops, its massive walls looming like a mountain of stone. And then, as they step into the open space of the square, it stands fully revealed. Enormous, almost impossible. Like something not built by human hands, but by God's. The boy gasps, though he has seen it before. Every time, it takes his breath away. The sheer scale, the way it seems to swallow the sky, the way the arches seem endless. He squeezes his father's hand tighter. Vendors are already gathered outside, calling out their wares, cheap wine, honeyed nuts, slices of fruit. The smell of roasted meat drifts through the air. People jostle and chatter, their voices blending into a restless hum. And everywhere, the sound of sandals against stone, the clink of coins, the bark of orders from officials who try to maintain some order as the crowds press forward. They join the line, waiting to be admitted. Around them, men in plain tunics, women with hair pinned carefully, children bouncing on their toes. Some are rich with fine clothes and servants who carry stools. Others are poor, their tunics worn thin, but their eyes just as wide with anticipation. The line moves slowly. Guards check tickets, their spears gleaming. The boy stares up at them, half afraid, half fascinated. His mother whispers for him not to worry, they are only doing their duty. At last, they step through one of the great arches, into the shadowy corridors within. The sudden coolness is a relief from the sun. The walls echo with footsteps and voices. Torches burn along the stone passageways, though the daylight spills in from high windows. The father guides them upward, along the narrow staircases that wind toward their section. They climb higher and higher, until the corridor opens suddenly into light again, into the arena itself. The sight is overwhelming. The oval space stretches wide, ringed by tier upon tier of stone seating. The sand of the arena floor glows golden beneath the sun. Far below, officials are already moving about, preparing. Musicians test their instruments. Stagehands scatter sawdust, check nets, drag props into place. The mother finds their row, and they shuffle along the stone bench, settling into their place among hundreds of others. The boy leans forward, resting his arms on the railing, his eyes fixed on the empty arena below. Around them, the crowd swells, pouring in through countless entrances. The noise grows louder, a mix of laughter, argument, song, and gossip. Somewhere, a man is selling cushions, calling out his price, for the stone seats grow hard after hours of sitting. The father buys a small parcel of figs, passing one to his son. The sweetness bursts in the boy's mouth as he chews, his eyes never leaving the arena floor. The sun climbs higher, the benches fill, the air grows hot, the noise grows restless, and then, at last, the sound of trumpets. The games have begun. Yet before any gladiator steps onto the sand, there are rituals. Priests walk solemnly, their robes gleaming, carrying incense that curls into the air. Offerings are made to the gods. The emperor's box is decorated with banners, though the emperor himself has not yet arrived. The boy shifts on the stone bench, his excitement mingling with impatience. He does not fully understand the prayers, but he knows they are important. The crowd quiets respectfully, though whispers still ripple here and there. Did you know that for many Romans, the games were not just entertainment, but almost sacred? A way of honouring the gods, a way of showing Rome's power, a way of binding the community together in shared ritual? To them, the Colosseum was not just a theatre of blood, but a theatre of order, of identity, of belonging. The boy does not know this, not consciously, but he feels it in the way the crowd holds its breath, in the way his father bows his head, in the way the sunlight catches the smoke of the incense and turns it silver. When the prayers end, the musicians strike up again, louder now, their horns echoing across the stone, the officials gesture. The gates creak open, and from the shadows beneath the arena, the first spectacle emerges. Not a gladiator, not yet, but animals, strange, wondrous creatures brought from the far edges of the empire. Deer with branching antlers, birds with bright feathers, a lion led in chains by handlers who grip their ropes tightly. The crowd gasps, points, murmurs. For many, this is the first time they have ever seen such creatures. For the boy, the sight of the lion is terrifying and beautiful all at once. Its mane glows like fire in the sunlight. Its eyes gleam. It roars and the sound vibrates through the stones beneath his feet. He presses against his mother's side, both frightened and thrilled. She strokes his hair, murmuring softly, but her own eyes never leave the beast. The animals are paraded, displayed, then led away. Some will return later, not in such peaceful fashion. But for now, the crowd applauds, marvels, talks excitedly among themselves. The boy licks the sweetness of figs from his fingers. His father takes a sip of wine. The mother fans herself against the heat. And all the while, the Colosseum swells with life, with breath, with sound, like a living creature itself, stone and flesh together. The day is only beginning. The boy shifts again on the hard stone bench. Around him, voices rise and fall like waves, some sharp and loud, others soft and lazy. An old woman, too, rows back, complains that her seat is too high. A man nearby laughs at some joke, his belly shaking, while his friend hushes him before the officials can glare their way. Vendors push through the aisles, their baskets filled with bread, olives, and honey cakes. The smell drifts temptingly. The boy's stomach rumbles, though he tries not to ask for more. His father notices, though, and quietly presses another fig into his hand. The sun warms his shoulders. He leans against his mother's arm and lets his gaze wander over the arena. The sand looks soft, like the beach near Ostia, where they once visited distant relatives. But here, the sand is clean and pale, spread carefully, hiding the stains of yesterday's games. Workers rake it smooth again and again, erasing what came before, preparing for what is about to happen. The crowd grows restless. The rituals are done, the animals shown. Everyone knows what must come next. And then, like a storm breaking, surges, the gates swing wide, and the gladiators enter. They do not come alone, but in a parade, a grand procession. Trumpets blare. Standards are carried aloft, painted with symbols of legions, of gods, of emperors past and present. The gladiators themselves walk in pairs or groups, each dressed in their distinctive armour. The Mirmillo with his heavy helmet, the Retiarius with his net and trident, the Secutor with his rounded shield. The crowd roars in approval, each person shouting the name of their favourite, calling out encouragement or mockery. The sound swells so great that the boy covers his ears for a moment, though curiosity soon pulls his hands away. He watches, wide-eyed, as the gladiators march with pride, some raising their weapons, some staring grimly ahead, some smiling as though they already hear the cheers of victory. Did you know that not all gladiators were slaves, nor all unwilling? Some were volunteers, drawn by the promise of glory, of fame, of rewards too tempting to resist. Others had no choice, bound by chains or punishment. And yet, when they stepped onto the sand, they all became something larger than themselves, symbols, stories, heroes or villains in the theatre of Rome. The boy does not think of these things. He only knows that they look magnificent, larger than life. He whispers to his mother, asking which one will win. She smiles softly, saying that no one can know. That is part of the wonder. The gladiators salute, their voices ringing out together, echoing off the stone. Words of ritual, of respect. To the emperor, though he is not yet seated. To the crowd whose will they serve. And then the parade ends. They file away, disappearing once more beneath the arena, leaving behind only the echo of their voices. The crowd murmurs, shifting in anticipation. The boy's father explains that the matches will come later, after the morning spectacles. There is still much to see first. And so the morning unfolds slowly like the turning of a page. The crowd watches staged hunts, hunts that are not truly hunts but carefully arranged performances. From hidden doors, wild beasts burst forth, leopards, boars, even bears. Boars. Hunters with spears and bows step into the arena, their movements rehearsed, their aim practiced. The animals snarl, leap, charge. The hunters dodge, strike, subdue. The crowd gasps, cheers, claps, sometimes laughs at the clumsier moment. The boy clutches his mother's arm when a leopard leaps so high he fears it will climb the barrier. His mother laughs softly, assuring him the walls are too tall. The smell of dust rises from the sand, mixing with the smell of sweat, of roasted meat still sold by vendors in the aisles. The boy tastes grit on his lips, wipes his face with the back of his hand, and feels both tired and thrilled all at once. As the hunts end, the animals dragged away. The crowd begins to stir more eagerly. For everyone knows what comes after. The first gladiatorial match. Trumpets sound once more, sharper now like a call to arms. From one gate a gladiator steps forth, a secutor, helmet gleaming, shield raised. From the opposite gate his opponent, a rosarius, bareheaded, neck coiled, trident in hand. The crowd erupts. Some call out the secutor's name, others chant for the rosarius. Bets are shouted, coins exchanged. The boy leans forward so far his mother has to steady him. His eyes are fixed on the two men below, so small yet so vivid, their armour catching the sun. The secutor advances heavily, shield raised. The rosarius dances lightly, circling, net swinging in his hand. The boy's father murmurs explanations, how the secutor is trained to press forward, how the rosarius must keep distance, how each has strengths and weaknesses. The boy only half hears him. His breath catches as the rosarius suddenly flings his net. It misses, the secutor charges. The trident flashes, glancing off the shield. The crowd shouts. The boy grips his knees tightly, heart pounding. The fight is not long, but to him it feels endless. Sand sprays with every step. The clang of metal rings against the stone. The secutor presses forward again and again until at last his sword cuts deep and the rosarius stumbles, falling. The crowd roars, but the fight is not yet done. The secutor raises his hand, waiting. The crowd must decide, live or die. Voices clash, some shouting for mercy, some demanding blood. The boy looks at his father, confused, afraid. His father only shakes his head, saying nothing. The emperor's seat remains empty, but the officials glance upward, then gesture. The decision is made. The secutor lowers his blade. The secutor lowers his blade. The rosarius is spared. The crowd cheers again, though some boo. The boy exhales, not realizing he had been holding his breath. The fighters are led away. The arena is raked smooth once more, the blood covered. The cycle continues. Hours pass in this rhythm. Spectacle, pause, spectacle again. The sun climbs high, baking the stone. Shadows shrink, then stretch again as the day lengthens. People shift on their seats, fanning themselves, buying more food, murmuring about which gladiator impressed them most. For the boy, time blurs. The sounds, the sights, the smells, they merge into a single vast memory, overwhelming and yet strangely dreamlike. He feels himself floating in it, as though he is no longer just watching, but part of something immense. And yet, beneath it all, he feels a strange wonder. That he, a small boy of no great importance, sits here among tens of thousands, witnessing something that feels as though it has always existed and will always exist. Did you know that on some days over 50,000 people could fill these seats, more than the size of many entire towns of the empire? That for many, this was the greatest structure they would ever see, the greatest gathering they would ever join. The boy does not know the numbers. But he feels the weight of it, the way the noise of the crowd seems to shake the air itself, the way the walls rise higher than anything he has ever climbed. By late afternoon, the first great matches are done. The crowd hums with tired satisfaction, though they no more still waits the executions, the grand finales, the starfighters. But for now, there is a lull, a pause, as officials prepare the next act. The boy lies against his mother's lap, eyes half closed, listening to the endless murmur of the Colosseum around him. He tastes dust on his tongue, feels the heat of the sun, smells the mingling of sweat and incense, and in that moment he does not think of blood or of winners and losers. He thinks only of how vast and strange the world is, and how he is a small part of it, carried along with everyone else. The Colosseum waits. The crowd waits. The day is far from done. The sun slides toward its height, burning white in the Roman sky. Shadows cling beneath the arches, but on the open benches of the Colosseum, the heat presses down like a weight. Cloaks are drawn over heads, hands shade eyes, fans made of woven reeds flutter lazily. The boy squints against the light, his lips dry. His mother pours a little water from her clay flask into his hands, and he sips carefully. Around them, others do the same, the slow, practical rituals of a crowd that knows how to endure long hours in the sun. Vendors pass again, their calls growing hoarse. A bread, olives, dates. One carries a tray of honey cakes, their sweetness melting in the heat. Another sells cheap wine, the smell sharp as he splashes it into clay cups. Coins clink, hands exchange, bites are taken, and murmurs resume. The morning spectacles have ended, but everyone knows the day is far from finished. If anything, the most unsettling part now begins. The executions. The boy hears the whispers, feels the change in the air. It is not the same excitement that greeted the gladiators. This is something heavier, slower. A current of unease runs beneath the chatter, though some speak eagerly, as if waiting for dark curiosity to be satisfied. The gates creak again. From the shadows beneath the arena, prisoners are led out, their hands bound, their faces pale, their tunics torn. Criminals condemned by the courts, rebels, sometimes even Christians in later years. Today, they are nameless to the crowd, their stories swallowed by the vastness of the spectacle. The boy grips his mother's hand tightly. He does not understand fully, only that these men are not gladiators, not trained, not prepared. They walk slowly, stumbling, blinking against the sunlight. The crowd grows louder, some jeering, some shouting insults, others watching in silence. Officials move them into place, arranging them like pieces on a board, and then the gates open once more. From the dark, the beasts emerge, lions lean and restless, a bear heavy-footed snorting through its muzzle, wolves snapping at their chains, the prisoners freeze, terror plain in their eyes. The crowd shouts, some in delight, some in horror. The boy buries his face against his mother's arm, though he cannot help but peek through his fingers. He sees the lions circle, the prisoners scatter, the sand churn beneath frantic feet. The sound of roars, of cries, of weapons clashing, though the prisoners hold no real weapons, only what they were given. Dull blades as small shields, sometimes nothing at all. The struggle is brief, chaotic. Dust rises, blood spatters, the crowd shouts. The boy does not watch all of it. His mother strokes his hair gently, murmuring that it will be over soon. His father sits in silence, his face unreadable, and soon enough it is done. The sand is raked again, the bodies carried away, the beasts led back to their cages. The arena looks clean once more, though the memory lingers. Did you know that for many Romans these executions were as much about justice as spectacle? They believed that by watching punishment carried out in public, order was restored, laws affirmed, the power of Rome made visible. To them, it was not cruelty alone, but a statement. That disobedience had consequences, that Rome was unshakable. The boy does not know this. He only feels uneasy, as though something heavy sits in his chest. He eats another fig quietly, the sweetness dull against the taste of dust. The crowd shifts again, murmurs rising, because now, the moment everyone has been waiting for draws near. The emperor is about to arrive. The officials move quickly, banners unfurling, musicians lifting their horns. Soldiers take positions along the corridors. A hush falls, then swells into a roar as the imperial procession appears. First the guards gleaming in their armour, then attendants carrying symbols of office, torches, standards, wreaths, and at last the emperor himself, walking slowly, lifted slightly above the crowd so all may see. The boy leans so far forward his mother has to steady him again. He sees the emperor's robes, rich with purple and gold, the laurel wreath on his head, the way the sunlight flashes against jewelled ornaments. He does not understand politics, nor the burdens of power. To him, the emperor is almost divine, a figure larger than life. The crowd erupts in cheers, shouts of loyalty, praises. Some wave cloths and bow their heads, some simply raise their hands in salute. The sound is immense, a living ocean of voices that crashes against the stone. The Emperor raises his hand. The crowd quiets instantly. He takes his seat in the imperial box, shaded, elevated, adorned with banners. From here he will watch, and from here he will decide. The boy whispers to his father, asking if the Emperor truly rules all the world. His father chuckles softly, saying that to Rome, it feels so. The games resume. And now the gladiators return. Not just any, but the most famous, the most skilled. Men whose names are known across the city, whose victories are retold in taverns, whose likenesses are scratched onto the walls by adoring fans. The boy has heard some of these names whispered by neighbours, argued over in the market. And now, here they are, stepping into the sunlit arena. The crowd roars louder than ever. Wages are shouted. Favours are promised to the gods, Old men lean forward eagerly, young women cheer. Children clap their hands. The air hums with expectation. 2 fighters step forward, bow, salute. One is a Mamillo, broad and strong, his heavy helmet shaped like a fish, his shield tall. The other is a 3X, agile, curved sword in hand, small shield flashing in the sun. The boy watches, breathless. The match begins. The Mamillo presses forward, shield high. The 3X circles, darting, striking, retreating. The sand flies beneath their feet. Blades clash, slam, shields slam. The sound echoes up into the highest rows. The crowd sways with the rhythm of the fight, gasps at each near strike, cheers at each clever dodge. Some chant the names of the fighters. Others clap in time, as though the battle is a song. The boy feels his heart pound. He does not blink. He feels every step, every clash, as though he himself were on the sand. The fight stretches long, neither yielding. Sweat drips. Breathing grows heavy. Dust coats armour and skin. Yet still they fight, each waiting for the other to falter. Finally, with a sudden burst, the 3X slips past the shield, his curved sword biting deep. The Mamillo stumbles, falls to one knee. The crowd explodes with sound. Some cry out for mercy, others for death. The Emperor leans forward, hand poised. The boy clutches his father's arm. What will be chosen? The Mamillo raises his finger, signalling surrender. The crowd roars. The Emperor waits, then gestures. Mercy! 3X steps back, salutes. The Mamillo is led away, wounded but alive. The crowd claps, shouts, argues. The boy exhales, shaky but thrilled. His mother smiles faintly, brushing dust from his hair. His father nods, satisfied. The day presses on. More matches, more cheers, more blood and dust. The boy grows weary, but he cannot look away. Each fight feels like a story unfolding before him, unpredictable, alive. Did you know that the Colosseum could host dozens of such fights in a single day, stretching from morning until dusk? That some gladiators became as famous as modern athletes, their names carved on walls, their faces painted on small lamps and cups. For the people of Rome, these were heroes, villains, celebrities, and symbols all at once. The boy does not know the history that will be written later. He only knows the sound of the crowd, the shimmer of the sand, the ache of sitting on hard stone, the thrill that surges each time the gates open once more. The sun begins to sink, shadows stretching across the arena. The heat softens, replaced by a golden glow. The air grows cooler, but the noise of the crowd does not fade. If anything, it grows louder, for the greatest matches still remain. The boy rubs his eyes, tired yet unwilling to leave. His family sits close, pressed among thousands, all breathing the same dust, all waiting for the next clash, and as the trumpets sound again, he leans forward once more, heart racing, ready to see what comes next. The Colosseum is alive, the Colosseum is eternal, and the day is not yet done, The hours drift on, as though time itself has been drawn into the vast rhythm of the arena. The boy no longer knows how long he has been sitting. The sun has shifted from burning white above their heads to a gentler, golden glow that stretches shadows across the sand. The air feels different now. Cooler, softer. The sharp edge of heat has lifted. A breeze stirs at the highest levels, carrying the mingled smells of dust, sweat, food, and oil lamps beginning to be lit in shaded corridors. Around him, people stretch their legs, shift their weight, murmur to one another. The boy's mother adjusts her hair, loosens her shawl. His father buys a small cup of watered wine, passing it carefully for them to sip. Even in weariness there is anticipation, for the day is reaching its height and the greatest wonders are yet to come. Trumpets blare again, startling the boy into straightening. He rubs his eyes, fighting the drowsiness of long hours. What happens next? His father whispers, will be something rare, something to remember. The gates open, but not for gladiators. Not for beasts. The sand itself begins to change. Did you know that the Colosseum's arena floor could be transformed into water? That channels and mechanisms, hidden beneath, allowed the space to be flooded for mock sea battles, reenacting famous victories of Rome. The boy watches, mouth open, as workers rush about, pulling away panels, opening hidden sluices. Water begins to pour in, shimmering in the low sun, soaking into the sand until it is no longer sand at all, but a shallow, rippling pool. The crowd murmurs in amazement. Some laugh in disbelief, others clap their hands, children cheer. The boy grips the edge of the stone bench, leaning forward as the arena becomes something entirely new. And then, from hidden gates, small ships are rolled in, painted, adorned, fitted for display. Crews of men climb aboard, dressed in costumes that mimic foreign sailors, their helmets glinting, their oars dipping into the water. The musicians play louder, drums beating like the rhythm of waves. The ships move, clumsy yet magnificent, circling one another as though at sea. The boy can hardly breathe. Never has he seen ships so close, let alone ships inside a place of stone. He hears the splash of oars, the shouts of the mock sailors, the clash as they ram against one another. Spears are thrown, shields raised, men leap dramatically into the water, thrashing, splashing, their struggles exaggerated for the crowd. The Colosseum rings with laughter, cheers, applause. People point, wave, call out names. Some toss coins toward their favoured crew, though the coins vanish quickly into the water. The boy claps until his hands sting, his voice lost in the roar. For a moment, he feels as though he too is at sea, swept into the drama of storm and battle, carried far beyond Rome itself. The mock battle ends with one ship capsizing, its crew tumbling into the water, splashing wildly as officials blow horns to declare victory. The crowd erupts in applause, stamping their feet, calling for more. The boy cheers with them, heart racing. Slowly, the workers drain the water, scraping sand once again, smoothing the arena floor. The boy watches, marveling at how quickly the world can change and change again. First sand, then water, then sand once more. The sky shifts further. The sun slides lower, its light turning the stone walls amber, then rose. Long shadows stretch across the seats. The air cools, almost sweet, as evening approaches. Yet the energy in the crowd does not fade. If anything, it swells. Because everyone knows what remains. The final gladiatorial duels, the greatest matches of the day. Trumpets sound slower now, more solemn, as though announcing something sacred. The gates open once more. The gladiators emerge, those who are most famous, most feared, most beloved. Men whose reputations fill the city, whose faces appear in mosaics, whose victories have been sung. The boy whispers their names, repeating what he has heard in taverns, in the marketplace, in the gossip of neighbours. His father nods, smiling faintly, for he too has waited for this moment. Two fighters step into the centre of the arena. Both are veterans, scarred, strong, moving with the ease of long training. One carries a broad shield and short sword, the other a pair of curved blades. Their armour gleams, their helmets shine, their muscles taut with readiness. The crowd falls into a hush, then explodes again as the fighters salute, circling each other, testing, waiting. The boy holds his breath. The clash begins. Blades flash in the golden light, steel striking steel. Dust swirls, rising with every step. The fighters move with precision, with fury, with grace. Each strike feels final, each dodge a miracle. The crowd leans forward, as though pulled by invisible strings. Cheers erupt with every near victory, groans with every slip. Coins are wagered, favours promised, voices raised in chant. The boy feels as though his heart beats in time with the fighters' footsteps. He grips his knees tightly, unable to look away. The duel stretches long, longer than any before. Sweat drips, armour dents, blood stains, and yet neither yields. They fight as though not only their lives, but their honour, their very existence, rests on this moment. At last, one falters. A stumble, a slip of footing. The other seizes the chance, blade flashing. The crowd erupts as the fighter falls, weapon clattering to the sand. The victor stands over him, chest heaving, weapon raised. He looks upward toward the emperor. The crowd chants divided. Some cry for mercy, some for death. Hands wave, gestures fly, voices thunder. The emperor raises his hand, holds it high, considers. The silence that follows is immense, like the pause between heartbeats. The boy clutches his mother's arm, eyes wide, breath caught. The emperor lowers his hand. The decision is made. The crowd roars. The victor bows. The fallen led away. The sand raked once more. The arena is cleared. The day is done. The boy sinks against his mother, exhausted. His head rests on her shoulder, eyes half closing. Around him, thousands begin to rise, voices blending into a tidal wave of sound. Cheers, laughter, arguments, the shuffle of sandals against stone. The sun slips below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of purple and gold. Torches are lit, casting flickering light across the arches. The Colosseum, once roaring with sound, begins to empty, its vastness echoing with the retreating tide of people. The boy's father takes his hand, guiding him through the crowd, down the narrow corridors, back into the cool evening air outside. The square is alive with movement, vendors packing up, beggars calling out, children chasing one another in the dust. The boy looks back once, just once, at the towering arches, now glowing in the torchlight. He feels a strange mix of weariness and wonder. He knows he will dream of this day for years to come, the animals, the ships, the fighters, the roar of the crowd. Did you know that many who left the Colosseum felt this same daze, this same sense of having touched something larger than themselves? That for all its blood and cruelty, it was also a place of community, of memory, of awe. The boy does not have words for it. He only knows that he feels small, and yet somehow part of something vast. Hand in hand with his parents, he walks home through the darkening streets of Rome. Behind him, the Colosseum looms against the night sky, silent now, but waiting, always waiting, for the next day's games. The streets outside the Colosseum are alive with motion, as if the tide of humanity released from the arena is now flowing into every alley, every plaza, every market stall in Rome. Families walk together, their voices hushed with exhaustion or bright with laughter. Groups of young men argue about which gladiator was strongest, replaying every feint and strike as if their words might change the outcome. Older citizens shake their heads at the cruelty of it all, though their eyes still gleam with the light of memory. The boy walks with his parents, his hand warm in his father's calloused grip, his mother carrying the folded shawl she has used against the sun. The dust of thousands of feet swirls around them, and lanterns flare to life one by one, strung outside shops and taverns. Rome itself seems to breathe with them, alive with the pulse of shared experience. Did you know that after a day at the Colosseum, much of the city seemed to buzz with its echoes? Bakers sold bread, stamped with images of gladiators, tavern songs celebrated victories, children reenacted duels with sticks in courtyards. The games did not end when the arena emptied. They spilled into the very fabric of Roman life. As the family makes their way through narrow streets, they pass doorways where neighbours are already gathered, recounting what they saw. A woman gestures with wide arms, describing how the ships rocked on the water. A man mimics the final blow of the victorious fighter, stomping the cobbles to punctuate his tale. Laughter rises, mixing with the drifting notes of a lyre played nearby. The boy listens, wide-eyed. He had thought the day belonged only to him, to his memory. But now he realizes it belongs to everyone. Each voice tells it differently, shaping the same scenes into new stories, weaving a tapestry of perspectives. Later, in a small tavern, his father pauses for a drink. The boy sits quietly on the bench, leaning against his mother, as men at the next table argue. One insists the emperor was merciful, sparing the defeated gladiator. Another insists it was weakness and that Rome must show strength. Their voices rise and fall, clashing like swords, while others lean in, nodding or scoffing. The boy notices something. It is not only blood that lingers from the arena, it is the meaning. Each person carries the games differently, some as proof of Rome's greatness, some as entertainment, some as lessons in bravery or fate. And as they speak, they shape not just memory, but identity. For centuries, the Colosseum would be more than stone. It would be a mirror. A place where Romans saw themselves reflected. Fierce, disciplined, communal, proud, sometimes cruel, but always united by spectacle. Did you know that in Rome to say one had seen the games was almost the same as saying one belonged? The boy's head drifts against his mother's shoulder as he listens. His eyelids grow heavy, but the voices around him weave together into a kind of lullaby, the laughter, the boasting, the hushed awe. When they finally step into their home, the oil lamps flickering against plastered walls, he curls on his mat, with the sounds of the Colosseum still echoing in his mind. The roar of the crowd, the flash of swords, the shimmering water of the mock sea, all of it spins behind his eyes as sleep claims him. Across the city, thousands dream the same dreams, of lions leaping, of ships colliding, of emperors deciding fate with a gesture. In those dreams, the Colosseum is eternal, its arches rising not of stone but of memory, glowing even in darkness. And as the years pass, these memories will not fade. Children will grow into adults who remember their first glimpse of the arena. Old men will recount the greatest battles as if they happened yesterday. Travellers will return home carrying tales that spread Rome's might across continents. The Colosseum will live in their stories, but history is never still. The boy who once clutched his mother's arm may one day tell his children about that shimmering afternoon when the arena became the sea, when the crowd became a single voice. His children may nod, wide-eyed, and ask for more. Yet even as he tells it, the world beyond Rome will be shifting. New frontiers, new battles, new lands to be claimed. Because while the Colosseum binds Romans together within the city, far beyond its walls Rome is stretching outward, reaching across seas, across rivers, across mist-shrouded isles. And those isles, windswept and distant, will soon learn what it means to face Rome. Imagine now, as the Colosseum falls into night, a ship cutting through northern waters. Imagine soldiers landing on rocky shores, their breath clouding in the chill air, their sandals crunching on unfamiliar soil. Imagine the echo of Latin words among people who speak in tongues Rome has never heard before. The story of Rome does not end with the games. The Colosseum is but one heartbeat in a vast body. And in our next tale, we will follow that heartbeat outward, into Britain, a land of mist and rebellion, of tribes and emperors, where Rome sought not just spectacle, but empire itself. What everyday people saw in the Colosseum was wonder, community, cruelty, and awe. But what they would one day hear, through gossip, through travellers, through soldiers returning, was that Rome's story did not stay within its walls. It crossed the sea, and so, as our night drifts toward silence, we close the gates of the Colosseum behind us. The torches fade, the arches dissolve into shadow. Yet in the distance, another horizon is waiting. The roar above is fading now, the arches glowing with torchlight as the crowd pours into Rome's streets. Yet beneath the sand of the arena, life does not end. If anything, it stirs more urgently once the people are gone. Few in the stands ever truly saw what lay below them. From their seats they could only guess. They might notice how suddenly an animal appeared, springing upward as if from nowhere. They might marvel at how ships had been launched into a space that was dry only moments before. They might whisper about trapdoors, pulleys, secret chambers. But to most Romans, the hypogeum, the underworld of the Colosseum, was a mystery. Did you know that the Colosseum's hidden basement was larger than many city blocks, a maze of tunnels, cages, elevators, and machinery? A secret stage crew of hundreds laboured there, unseen, to conjure the wonders that dazzled the crowd. Imagine stepping down into that world now. The air is different here, damp, heavy, thick with the musk of animals and the sweat of men, the sweat of men. Torches sputter against the stone walls, their smoke clinging to the ceilings of narrow corridors. The noise is muffled but constant, the dull roar of the crowd above, the distant clatter of wood and metal, the groans of animals restless in their cages. Slaves move quickly, their bodies lean from labour, their tunics stained. Some carry buckets of water, others oil for the great winches and pulleys that lift platforms toward the arena floor. They speak in hurried whispers, the language of work that must be done without pause. In one chamber, a lion shifts in its cage, eyes glowing in the dim light. The beast's mane brushes the bars as it moves. Restless, hungry, a keeper, his arms scarred from past encounters, tosses in meat. The lion growls low, tearing into it with a sound that makes even the hardened workers glance away. Nearby, leopards pace in smaller cages, their tails flicking, their eyes unblinking. Bears huff and shuffle, chained in dark corners. Birds, too, crates of exotic fowl, their feathers ruffled, their cries sharp and eerie in the torchlit dark. The boy in the stands never knew it, but every roar he heard, every sudden appearance of a creature, had been prepared hours before by these men. The animals had been coaxed, starved just enough to make them fierce, dragged through winding tunnels to the right place. A signal was given, a lever pulled, and suddenly, what seemed like magic, beasts emerged into the sunlight, to the gasps of thousands. And beneath, the workers exhaled, wiping sweat from their foreheads, before racing to prepare the next wonder. Did you know that some cages were built on platforms that could be winched upward, so that an animal would seem to leap straight from the ground itself? These elevators, powered by teams of men straining at ropes, were marvels of Roman engineering, yet they remained invisible to the audience. Picture now one of these platforms being readied. A cage is rolled into position. Slaves lock it into place, securing the beams with wooden pins. Another crew coils thick ropes around winches, their muscles straining as they prepare for the signal. The animal inside growls, slamming against the bars, rattling the wood. The men flinch but hold steady. Above, the crowd sees only sand raked smooth. Then, a horn, a signal. The men below heave. Ropes creak, wood groans. Slowly the platform rises, guided by pulleys through a hidden shaft. At the last moment, a trapdoor above snaps open. Light floods the cage, and with a sudden roar the beast bursts into the arena, as though the earth itself had given birth to fury. The crowd gasps. Tss. Children scream. The Emperor leans forward, but down below, in the dim corridors, the men already prepare for the next trick, the next illusion, for every spectacle above was born from toil below. The Colosseum was not only stone and sand. It was wood, rope, iron and flesh, men bent to the will of empire, unseen but essential. Some of these workers were slaves captured in war. Others were criminals, spared death but condemned to labour in this subterranean world. A few were free men, engineers and specialists, prized for their skill. Yet all breathed the same heavy air. All lived in the shadow of the spectacle. Listen closely, and you might hear their voices, carried faintly beneath the roar of the crowd. Commands barked in Latin, curses spat in Greek, groans of effort, grunts of pain, a chorus of human sound that no one in the stands would ever notice. There were moments, though, when the two worlds touched. Sometimes a trapdoor jammed, a platform stuck halfway, leaving an animal thrashing in terror. The crowd above would murmur, puzzled, restless. And down below, panic would surge as men scrambled, hauling at ropes, cursing the gods, praying the machinery would move before the Emperor's patience ran out. Sometimes an animal broke free before reaching the arena, slashing through handlers in the corridors. The crowd might hear a distant scream, quickly drowned by trumpets or drums. Above, they would marvel at the beast's ferocity. Below, men bled into the dust. The Hypogeum was a place of shadows, of secrets, a place where lives were spent to make wonders real. And yet, in its own way, it too was part of what everyday people saw. They might not glimpse the corridors themselves, but they sensed the mystery, the unseen labour. They knew that Rome's greatness rested not only on emperors and gladiators, but on the hidden hands that pulled the ropes, fed the lions, stoked the fires. Did you know that in later centuries, when the arena was abandoned and nature crept in, travellers would wander these ruins, marvelling at the tunnels below? They could hardly believe that such complexity had once served mere entertainment. The boy from our story, drifting to sleep in his small home, never saw these chambers, yet he dreamed of them. In his mind he imagined secret doors, hidden rooms, men who whispered in shadows. He imagined the arena as more than what was visible, as something deeper, layered, endless. Endless. And in a way he was right. For the Colosseum was never just what met the eye. It was an entire world above and below, visible and hidden, roaring and silent. A world in which Rome revealed itself, not only in glory, but in the unseen toil that sustained it. Down in the Hypogeum, the world is measured not by the sweep of the sun or the drift of clouds, but by the rhythm of tasks, the thump of boots, the endless cycle of preparation and release. For one slave, taken years ago from a village in the east, the day begins long before the crowd assembles. He wakes in the cold dark of a cell that smells of straw and damp stone. His wrists still bear faint scars from chains once tighter, though now they are left unbound. Because where would he run? Above him waits the city, its alleys filled with guards, its gates watched. He is fed just enough bread to work, just enough water to endure. He shoulders a beam of wood, joining the line of others who carry supplies into the corridors. Their bare feet slap against stone, their shadows cast long by flickering torches. Some are silent, their mouths pressed shut against despair. Others mutter in languages he barely knows, snatches of Greek, Gaulish, Nubian. It is a chorus of exile, each voice torn from another land, bound together only by the Colosseum. By midday his tunic clings to his back, damp with sweat. He pulls ropes until his hands blister. He heaves at winches until his muscles quiver. Sometimes, when a platform finally locks into place and he hears the roar from above, he imagines he has lifted not wood and beast, but Rome itself, holding the empire on his back. Yet no one knows his name. No one will ever cheer for him. Not far from him works the beast keeper. He is older, his hair streaked with grey, his arms lined with scars. His job is more dangerous than the slaves, for he must face the creatures that Rome imports from its farthest provinces. This morning he coaxed a leopard from its cage with a bloody haunch of goat. He whispered low, steady words, though his heart beat fast in his chest. He has seen what happens when a handler hesitates, when a chain snaps, when claws swipe faster than eyes can follow. Swipe faster than eyes can follow. His friend once lost an arm to a bear, bleeding out before help could come. Another was crushed by a panicked elephant, bones broken like sticks. Yet the beast-keeper continues. It is his trade, his curse, his pride, his pride. He knows how to read the twitch of a tail, the flattening of ears, the shift of weight that means danger. He knows which animals roar for hunger and which for rage. He has learned to breathe with them, to calm them, even to love them in some twisted way. Sometimes, in the deep night, he sits by their cages and speaks softly, as if they understand. He tells them of his childhood by the Tiber, of fishing with his father, of dreams that seem impossibly far away. They watch him with unblinking eyes, and he wonders if they pity him as much as he pities them. Then there is the engineer. He is not a slave, but a citizen, a man trained in the arts of mechanics. His tunic is cleaner, his meals richer. He carries tools of bronze and iron, not chains. Yet he too is bound to the perfection demanded by Rome. He walks the corridors, inspecting gears, testing pulleys, tightening bolts. His ears are tuned not to the roar above, but to the creak of rope, the whine of wood under strain. He knows that a single failure could humiliate him before the emperor, that a broken stage lift or a jammed trapdoor could undo months of planning. His pride lies not in applause but in invisibility. If the crowd never notices him, he has succeeded. Still, sometimes, as he wipes sweat from his brow and listens to the crowd thunder above, he wonders. Do they know? Do they guess at the thousands of hours spent designing, building, adjusting, so that a lion might appear at just the right moment? He shakes his head, smiling faintly. No, they see only magic, and perhaps that is enough. Each man moves through his day like a thread in a larger weaving, slaves hauling beams, beast-keepers steadying cages, engineers testing ropes, guards stationed at gates, watching with bored eyes. Runners darting between chambers, carrying messages, signals, warning. It is a rhythm as old as the Colosseum itself. The thunder above, the toil below. A cycle of unseen labour that gives birth to spectacle. Imagine standing there, deep in the hypogeum, when the crowd above roars. The stone trembles faintly, dust drifting from the ceilings. The sound is not sharp, not clear, but muffled, like the crashing of distant waves. It rises and falls, sometimes bursting so suddenly that torches flicker with the vibration. For those below, it is like living beneath a storm. They cannot see the lightning, but they feel its weight. The slave pauses mid-heave, sweat running down his temple, and closes his eyes. For a heartbeat, he imagines the noise is for him. That above, thousands cheer his name, not the clash of swords. That he is free, honoured part of Rome rather than beneath it. The thought vanishes as quickly as it comes, drowned in commands barked at his ear. The beast-keeper pauses as he locks a gate, the iron heavy under his palm. The roar above surges, and he wonders which animal they cheer now. Was it the lion he raised from a cub, now loosed into sand and blood? Into sand and blood. He swallows hard, pretending not to care. But somewhere deep inside he aches, for he knows the beasts he tended will not live long in Rome's hunger for spectacle. The engineer, hearing the thunder, runs his hand over a beam, checking for cracks. His mind measures force and pressure, weight and balance. Yet he cannot help feeling a thrill. It is his machinery that made this roar possible, his design, his calculation. The crowd may not know it, but the Colosseum itself is his applause. Did you know that for many who worked in the hypogeum, the games blurred into dreams after hours of labour? When they lay down to rest, the muffled roar would echo in their skulls, phantom and endless. Some said they could not sleep without it, as if silence itself felt unnatural. To live beneath the arena was to live in two worlds at once, one of shadows, dust and sweat, another of thunder, light and spectacle, and though the workers rarely glimpsed the sand, they felt it all the same, pulsing through stone into their bones. Night comes slowly to the Colosseum. Above, the last spectators file into the streets. Below, men collapse onto straw, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. The lions sleep in their cages, bellies heavy with meat. The ropes hang slack, the wheels creak no more. Only the drip of water and the sigh of tired breath remain. In that silence, the slave dreams of freedom, the beast-keeper dreams of fields and rivers, the engineer dreams of perfect machines, and all of them, though separate in fate, are bound by the same thought. Tomorrow it begins again. Dawn spreads gently over Rome, soft and golden, slipping across tiled rooftops and winding alleys. The night's chill lifts, and the city stirs to life once again. The Colosseum, looming in the distance, rests in quiet majesty. Yesterday, its walls shook with thunder, its sand drank blood, its corridors swarmed with thousands. Now it sits almost silent, like a beast digesting after a great feast. But Rome does not forget so quickly. The games may be over, yet they live on in the voices of the people. In the marketplace near the Forum, merchants arrange baskets of figs and olives, laying out bread still warm from the ovens. Customers gather, and with them come the first whispers of yesterday's spectacle. A woman selling fish raises her knife and declares that she saw a gladiator fight so close, so fierce, that she thought the emperor himself leaned forward in excitement. Another interrupts, shaking her head. Oh no, the best was the bear from Numidia. Did you not see how it swatted the man's shield away like it was nothing? The whole row beside me screamed. They laugh, their voices mixing with the clang of coins and the calls of hawkers. For them, the Colosseum is not just an arena. It is a common storybook, a living drama that unites all corners of Rome. Children skip through the streets, wooden swords in hand, reenacting duels they barely understood. One boy shouts that he is the Thracian, another insists he is the Murmillo, and soon they are locked in playful combat. Their mothers scold them gently, warning them not to break the pots left out to dry. But the boys hardly listen. For them, the Colosseum is not about cruelty or death. It is about heroes, speed, courage. It is a stage where even ordinary boys might one day imagine themselves standing. In taverns, the talk grows louder. Men sit hunched over mugs of watered wine, arguing about which gladiator deserved victory. Some swear one man yielded too soon, others claim the other should have been spared. A farmer visiting from the countryside boasts that he once knew a beast handler who worked in the hypogeum, and the others lean, close, eager for gossip. Every voice grows a little larger, a little braver as the wine flows. The Colosseum is as much theirs in memory as it was in sight. Not all conversations are light-hearted. In shaded courtyards, some mutter about the cost. How much grain could have been bought with the coins spent on exotic animals? How many roads could have been repaired with the gold that vanished into the sand? They do not say this loudly, for the games are the emperor's gift, a display of Rome's greatness. But still, in hushed tones, such thoughts slip free. Meanwhile, on the Palatine Hill, noble families host their own gatherings. Reclining on couches, they discuss not the fights themselves, but what they meant. Did the emperor linger too long before sparing the Retiarius? Was it a sign of mercy or of hesitation? Did the crowd's reaction suggest loyalty or impatience? For the elite, the games are a mirror of politics. Each cheer and gesture weighed like a message. As the morning lengthens, groups form at street corners, like actors circling around invisible stages. One man gestures wildly as he retells the moment a lion leapt upon a condemned criminal. He stretches his arms wide, his eyes burning with the memory, and the crowd gasps as if they are seeing it anew. Storytellers like him will keep the games alive long after the sand is swept clean. And so the city hums with echoes. The Colosseum has released its people back into Rome, but its shadow lingers in their words, their gestures, their very dreams. By afternoon, the markets are buzzing louder. The gossip has shifted from single moments to sweeping judgments. That Thracian gladiator, he will be a star, mark my words, says a baker, kneading dough. I would wager my next loaf he fights in the Grand Games next year. Another disagrees. No, the Murmillo is the one to watch. He has the look of a champion. You saw the way the crowd cheered when he raised his sword. The emperor himself nodded. Children tug at their mothers' sleeves, begging for toy helmets or little wooden shields sold by craftsmen who cleverly know what sells best after games. Rome's youngest will carry yesterday's duels into their play for weeks, turning courtyards into miniature arenas. Even the city's walls bear traces of the memory. Graffiti appears overnight. Crude sketches of gladiators locked in combat, names scratched in uneven letters, slogans declaring one man a hero and another a coward. These marks will stay long after the voices fade, silent witnesses to the passions stirred by a single day in the Colosseum. As dusk approaches, families sit together over meals, retelling once more what they saw. Fathers describe how the sun glinted off armour, mothers recall the sound of drums and horns, children chatter about which beasts they feared most. The day after the games is a day of remembering, and in remembering, the spectacle lives on. It is not only entertainment, it is identity. To be Roman is to have stood among thousands, to have felt the stone beneath one's sandals, to have joined in the roar of the crowd. The Colosseum belongs to every citizen, whether rich or poor, man or woman, child or elder. Its stories bind them, a shared memory woven into the fabric of the city. Night settles once more over Rome. The torches along the streets flicker, the voices grow softer, and one by one, windows close against the chill. Yet even as the city sleeps, dreams carry the echoes of the games. Some dream of blood and victory, others of fear and beasts, but all dream in the shadow of the Colosseum. Tomorrow, Rome will speak of other matters, trade, politics, love, but for this day, the day after the games, the amphitheatre still rules the city's heart. The Colosseum did not belong to a single day. It belonged to the turning of Rome's seasons, to the rhythm of time itself. It was not only an arena, but a clock of the empire, marking moments with blood and spectacle instead of bells. Imagine the city weeks before a grand festival. The days grow longer, the air warmer, and everywhere there is a hum of anticipation. Merchants stockpile bread and olives, craftsmen sharpen blades and hammer new armour, farmers bring their animals closer to the city gates. Children whisper about the beasts that might appear, their voices rising with excitement whenever someone mentions elephants or tigers. The people know the emperor has promised games, and when the emperor promises, the city listens. For the common citizen, these announcements were more than entertainment. They were gifts, proof that the ruler saw them, cared for them, offered something larger than bread alone. Bread fed the body, but games fed the soul, the hunger for belonging, for wonder, for escape. Did you know that the phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses, was already murmured in Rome's streets? Some used it with pride, others with irony. But all agreed the games were a language of power, an unspoken contract between ruler and ruled. In the days before the spectacle, Rome itself seemed to transform. Taverns filled with speculation, markets buzzed with rumour. Ships arrived in Ostia with cages and crates, bearing animals from Africa, Asia, distant provinces whose names children could barely pronounce. From the docks to the forum, one might catch glimpses of the empire's far reaches, a leopard snarling in a wooden crate, an ostrich flapping its wings in confusion, a trader boasting of a crocodile seen in chains. The city smelled different, too. Fresh hay carried for beasts. Resin from torches stocked for long nights, the iron tang of weapons freshly forged. The Colosseum, silent for weeks, slowly woke. Workers swept its tiers, patched its walls, tested its machinery. Down in the Hypogeum, repairs were made, ropes tightened, pulleys greased. Every corner of the arena prepared for the flood of people who would soon fill it, and the people prepared as well. Families saved coins to buy better seats. Vendors stored amphorae of watered wine, figs, nuts. Tailors stitched tunics so their wearers might appear just a little finer when seen among thousands. The games were not just a show, they were a stage for the city itself. To attend was to be Roman, to feel part of something greater than one's street or trade. On the morning of the festival, the city stirred earlier than usual. Even before the sun rose, lines began to form outside the amphitheatre. The air was cool, but voices warmed it. People jostled gently, laughing, calling out greetings to friends they hadn't seen since the last games. Children clung to their parents' hands, wide-eyed. Some clutched small wooden swords, others little clay cups they hoped to fill with wine later. The old shuffled patiently, leaning on canes but determined not to miss what Rome had promised. Trumpets blared as the gates swung wide. The flow of humanity poured inward, filling the corridors, spilling upward into the seats. Sand was freshly raked, banners draped in bright colours, the emperor's box adorned with garlands. And then the drums began. The games stretched not for hours but for days, sometimes even weeks. Mornings for animals, afternoons for executions, evenings for gladiators, each moment planned, each spectacle designed to impress. But beneath the blood and cries was a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of Rome itself, binding its people in shared wonder. Consider the emperor seated high above, his gaze calm but purposeful. Every cheer for a gladiator, Every gasp at a beast was also a cheer for him. He had given this gift after all. His name was on every mouth, his generosity etched into the memory of the crowd. When he spared a fighter, the people cheered his mercy. When he condemned, they cheered his strength. He did not need words, the arena spoke for him. For emperors, the Colosseum was not only stone and sand, it was theatre, throne, altar. Here they became more than men, they became symbols. And the people, in turn, felt themselves part of that symbol, bound together by spectacle. Did you know that some emperors staged games lasting over 100 consecutive days? The city lived almost entirely inside the amphitheatre, as if life itself had paused to watch. Imagine the exhaustion, the wonder, the surreal feeling of living so long in the shadow of sand and blood. For those who attended, it was not just entertainment, it was a season, a second calendar, woven into memory forever. But even beyond festivals, the Colosseum breathed in smaller ways. When no grand games were planned, smaller spectacles still occurred. Hunts, mock battles, displays of animals. Rome never let its people forget the arena, never let the sand grow cold for long. For children, the Colosseum became a school of imagination. They learned the names of gladiator types as though they were lessons: Murmillo, Thracian, Retiarius, Secutor. They practiced with sticks, argued about who was strongest, dreamed of glory or feared the shame of defeat. Some grew up to fight for real. Others grew up only to watch, but carried the games in their hearts all the same. For merchants, it was a season of profit. Bread, wine, meat, trinkets, souvenirs. Everything sold faster when the arena filled. For thieves, too, it was a season of opportunity. Crowds meant purses, and purses meant gold. Even crime bent its rhythm to the games. For priests, it was a season of unease. Though some ceremonies honoured the gods, others blurred lines between piety and cruelty. Did Jupiter truly demand such blood? Did Mars bless such carnage? Did Mars bless such carnage? Or were the gods merely excuses for what Rome desired most: control, display, belonging? These questions stirred quietly, never loud enough to drown the drums. As dusk fell each evening, the Colosseum glowed with torches, its arches lit like a crown. Families left weary but buzzing, their voices rising in chorus across the city. Markets swelled with gossip, taverns rang with songs, graffiti bloomed on walls. The games lived on not only in the arena, but in the city's very air. And so it went, season after season, year after year after year. The Colosseum was not merely a place one visited. It was a part of Rome's heartbeat. A citizen might not see every show, but they lived in its rhythm, felt its pulse, carried its memory. Even when years passed, people spoke of great spectacles as though they had happened yesterday. Do you remember the 100 lions? One man asked his neighbour. Do you recall when the emperor himself fought in the arena? Another would boast. These memories grew into legends, binding generations together. The Colosseum was Rome, and Rome was the Colosseum. And as the empire stretched outward, into deserts, forests, mountains, the memory of the arena stretched too. Soldiers carried tales of its glory to the provinces, merchants described it in distant marketplaces, poets compared it to the wonders of the world. But within Rome itself, it was always present. In laughter, in gossip, in arguments, in dreams, it was a season that never truly ended. Think now of a baker, rising in the dim hours before dawn, his hands already dusted with flour. He kneads dough steadily, rhythmically, while outside his small shop the city still sleeps. For him, the games are both a burden and a blessing. On days after a festival, the crowds demand more bread than usual, their appetites whetted by hours of spectacle. His arms ache from the work, yet his shop prospers, and he cannot help but smile when he hears his customers retelling the battles they witnessed. He himself had been there the day before, seated high in the stone tiers. He remembers how the Murmillo raised his shield, how the Thracian darted like a bird. The images replay in his mind even as he stretches dough, as if the games were still alive just behind his eyelids. In another home, a child curls on a mat, wooden sword clutched tightly in his hand. His mother strokes his hair. As he drifts between waking and dreaming, he mutters the names of gladiators in his sleep, his lips curving into a faint smile, as though he were already in the arena himself. For him, the Colosseum is not just memory but prophecy. It is the stage of his future, whether real or imagined. Elsewhere, a soldier on leave sits outside a tavern, his armour stacked beside him, his cup half empty. He stares toward the Colosseum, its arches gleaming faintly under moonlight. He has fought real battles on real frontiers, seen comrades die far from home, and yet the roar of yesterday's crowd echoes louder in his mind than the cries of war. In the arena, blood is spilled not for survival, but for spectacle. To him, that difference is both unsettling and oddly comforting. He drinks slowly, caught between pride in Rome's grandeur and a quiet unease he cannot name. These are the aftershocks of the games. Not just the memory of what happened, but the way it lingers, stretching into dreams, shaping conversations, haunting silences. The Colosseum does not release its hold when the crowd departs. It travels with them, carried in their voices, their gestures, their very breath. Days later, the city still hums with echoes. Graffiti grows on walls, crude drawings of gladiators locked in combat, names scratched deep by hands young and old. Some graffiti praises a champion, others mock a fallen fighter. Each mark is a voice frozen in stone, an eternal cheer or jeer carved for strangers to see. Vendors still sell little wooden swords and painted trinkets, capitalizing on the fever that lingers after each festival. Children beg for them, and parents, weary but indulgent, hand over coins. The objects are small, but the joy is great. For days afterward, courtyards ring with the sound of wooden blades clashing, the laughter of boys and girls playing at being gladiators. Even the city's prayers change for a time. In temples, citizens offer thanks for victories they saw, or ask the gods for favour upon their favourite fighters. Some light candles for the souls of the executed, though they do so quietly, almost guiltily, as if kindness were out of place in the shadow of spectacle. And the Colosseum itself waits, empty, its sands swept, its corridors silent, yet it does not feel abandoned. It feels as though it rests, gathering strength, preparing for the next eruption of sound and blood. Like a sleeping heart, it beats quietly beneath the city, ready to thunder again when the time comes. The longer you sit with Rome's rhythm, the more you realise the Colosseum is not only a building but a living presence. It shapes the year like the seasons themselves: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and games. Did you know that some Romans measured their lives not by birthdays or years, but by festivals? A man might say, I was there at the Games of Titus, or I remember the 100-day festival of Trajan, as though these events were markers in time, brighter than any calendar. In this way, the Colosseum stretched beyond the present into memory and identity. It became a way of knowing oneself. To be Roman was to say, I was there, I saw, I heard, I belonged. Think of the old woman leaning on her cane, recounting to her grandchildren how she once saw the emperor himself stand in the arena. Her voice softens, her eyes gleam, and for a moment she is young again, her bones light, her heart pounding. The children listen, wide-eyed, transported not by the event itself, but by the way memory makes it shimmer. Think of the young man, just of age, telling his friends how the crowd's roar shook his chest like thunder. He speaks with pride, not only of what he saw, but of what it means. That he was part of Rome's greatness, part of a collective larger than himself. And think of the emperor, standing in his private chamber after the games, hearing the echoes still drifting through the city. He knows that every voice carries his name, every cheer is a gift he gave. For him, the Colosseum is not only theatre, but power, woven into the very rhythm of his reign. In this way, the arena was eternal. Not in stone alone, though its arches soared against the sky, but in memory, in identity, in the seasons of human hearts. The Colosseum was never truly silent. Even when empty, it lived in whispers, in dreams, in the pulse of a city that measured itself by its spectacles. And so, Rome moved forward, day by day, festival by festival, each heartbeat echoing through the amphitheatre's vast embrace. Night falls differently over the Colosseum than over the rest of Rome. In the city's markets, torches glow warmly, laughter echoes from taverns, and the smell of bread lingers in the air. But at the amphitheatre, the shadows seem deeper, the arches more hollow, the silence more profound. When the crowds leave and the last torch is extinguished, the arena becomes something else. Not a theatre of the living, but a monument to the dead. Did you know that Romans believed the spirits of those who died violent deaths often lingered near the places where their blood was spilled? If so, then the Colosseum, where tens of thousands of souls had fallen, was perhaps the most haunted place in Rome. Imagine walking past it at midnight. The moon hangs low, pale light gliding over its arches. The stone seems to breathe with memory. The air is cold, colder than the surrounding streets, as if the very sand beneath has drawn in the warmth of centuries and will not give it back. People hurry their steps when passing by after dark. Some mutter quick prayer to Jupiter or Pluto, others clutch a charm of bronze or bone. Faun. They do not linger, for though the Colosseum is a place of pride by day, by night it feels like a threshold to another world. Rumours spread of sounds heard when no games were played. The clatter of unseen swords, the growl of animals long dead, the echo of a trumpet that no soldier blew. Some swore they heard the cheers of crowds rising faintly, as if the past itself had never truly ended. Children dared each other to creep close, to touch the cold stone, to peer through the arches. Some claimed to see shadows moving, though no torches burned within. Others said they felt hands brush against their skin, unseen and icy. The whispers grew darker. They said the spirits of gladiators walked the corridors, still fighting battles that had never ended. Men who died with blades in their hands relived their final moments forever, their souls chained to the sand. Condemned criminals, torn apart by beasts, wailed in anguish on quiet nights, their cries rising with the wind. Even the animals were not forgotten. Some swore they saw lions pacing behind the gates, their golden eyes gleaming in the dark. Others heard the hiss of snakes, the trumpeting of elephants, the flap of wings. Shadows of beasts joined shadows of men, as if the Colosseum itself could not release what it had devoured. And yet, not all stories were of terror. Some whispered of honour. A gladiator who fought bravely might appear as a guardian spirit, watching over those who walked near. Women who had lost husbands or brothers sometimes left offerings, bread, wine, flowers, at the gates, believing their loved ones still lingered within. Did you know that Romans often scratched protective charms into the walls of buildings near the arena? Small carvings of phalluses, eyes, or magical words, symbols meant to ward off spirits and curses. Even in the heart of the city, fear walked hand in hand with reverence. Inside, the silence was thicker still. When caretakers entered to sweep the sand, they moved quickly, speaking little ooh. Some refused to work after sunset. They said the air pressed too heavy, that the shadows seemed to shift, that their torches flickered without cause. One story told of a worker who vanished while repairing a gate. His tools were found neatly stacked, but he himself was gone. Some said he had been taken by spirits, dragged below into the hypogeum to join the dead. Others whispered he had simply fled, unable to bear the weight of so many restless souls. The Colosseum became, in these whispers, not only a place of spectacle, but a place of mystery. Its stones were soaked with too much blood. Its corridors had seen too much pain. It was as if the arena itself remembered, and that memory seeped out at night, touching those who dared draw near. Even by day, omens were feared. If an animal balked at entering the arena, some took it as a sign of divine disfavour. If a gladiator stumbled before his fight, whispers spread the gods had already chosen his fate. A sudden storm, a bird flying overhead, at the wrong moment, a silence falling across the crowd. These were not chants, but messages, ayers. The arena was not just theatre. It was a stage where gods too gave their signs. Priests walked the sand before great games, scattering salt, chanting prayers, seeking to cleanse what could never truly be cleansed. They knew, as all Rome knew, that the Colosseum was both a gift and a danger. It gave glory, but it also stirred forces that lay close to death, close to the underworld itself. Think of the child, years later, recalling how his mother pulled him close when thunder rolled above the Colosseum. "The gods are watching," she whispered. For him, the arena became not only memory but omen, a place where earth and heaven touched. Think of the old man, walking past at dusk, his cane tapping softly on the stones. He remembers friends who fell there, neighbours who cheered there, emperors who ruled there, emperors who ruled there. The shadows feel heavier to him, not because of fear, but because of weight, centuries pressing into silence. And think of the foreigner, a traveller from far provinces, who gazes at the amphitheatre with awe. To him, it is not haunted but holy, a wonder of Rome that seems larger than life. Yet even he shivers when he hears the stories, for deep down he wonders, how can so much death not leave a trace? The Colosseum's myths lived in Rome's veins as much as its games. They gave the arena a second life, one hidden beneath the sand, whispered in shadows, dreamed in silence. By day, it was spectacle. By night, it was mystery, and in this balance between life and death, glory and ghost, noise and silence, the Colosseum became eternal. There were men whose entire job was to guard the Colosseum at night. By day they were doorkeepers and caretakers, guiding carts in and out, keeping torches trimmed, but when the last citizen had gone home and the gates were barred, these same men stayed behind, pacing the echoing corridors. They carried spears, but most would admit in whispers that steel felt useless against what they feared. One guard, old and half-blind, was said to have heard voices from the Hypogeum. Not the rough voices of workers, not the growls of lions, but a long, drawn-out chant out soldiers praying before battle. He leaned over the trapdoor to listen, but the sound stopped at once, and only his own ragged breath filled the silence. When he told others, they laughed. They laughed. Yet none volunteered to take his watch the next night. Another told of the figure of a woman, pale and shimmering, who drifted between the arches. She wore no chains, yet her wrists seemed bound by invisible ties. When he called out, she vanished into the stone itself, leaving only a gust of cold air behind. Some said she was the spirit of a criminal once condemned to the beasts. Others believed she was a goddess of vengeance, walking the arena at night to remind Rome of its cruelty. There were children, too, who claimed to see things adults could not. A little girl once tugged at her father's sleeve while they passed the Colosseum after dark. "Do you see the man with the helmet?" she asked. The father saw nothing but stone and shadow. Yet the girl insisted. A tall man with a bronze helmet stood inside the arch, watching silently. She waved to him, but he never moved. Years later, she would tell the story again, her voice still trembling. Widows sometimes crept back to the arena long after the games were done. They brought offerings, garlands of flowers, a loaf of bread, a small jug of wine. They placed them at the gates or slid them into cracks in the stone. They whispered the names of their husbands or sons, hoping the spirits would hear. Rome had no graves for gladiators, no monuments for criminals. The Colosseum was their tomb, and so the arena gathered not only blood but memory. Each offering, each prayer, each whispered story added another layer to its presence. By day those layers were invisible. By night they seemed to press against the skin, to breathe against the ear. But did you know that some Romans swore they saw torches flickering deep within the arena long after it had been emptied, lights moving where no man walked, like the march of ghosts in silent procession? Priests explained them as tricks of the wind, reflections of moonlight, lies. But those who saw them swore they were funerary rites, the dead honouring the dead. Omens clung to the Colosseum. If lightning struck its walls, citizens feared it meant disaster. If birds circled overhead in odd numbers, priests rushed to interpret the sign. A gladiator tripping before combat, an animal refusing to enter the gate. These were not small accidents, but warnings from gods or spirits. In Rome, nothing that happened in the arena was meaningless. To guard against these forces, Romans turned to magic. Charms scratched into the stone, simple symbols of protection, prayers against evil, the ever-present eye to watch away curses. Women tied red threads around their children's wrists before bringing them to the games. Men carried amulets of bronze or bone, muttering short invocations to Fortuna or Nemesis. Even emperors did not ignore such things. Their priests performed long rituals of purification before great festivals, trying to soothe the restless dead. Some said the arena itself was an altar. That its oval shape echoed the cosmos, that the sand was like the surface of the earth, and that every drop of blood spilled there was an offering. It was a dangerous thought, one that blurred the line between entertainment and sacrifice. Yet when the games were at their height and thunder rolled across the sky, many Romans felt the truth of it in their bones. The night watchman whispered another story, one passed down like a secret. They claimed that when the wind blew just right, carrying voices from the Tiber and rustling through the arches, the Colosseum sang. Not with words, not with music, but with a low rising hum, like the voices of thousands joined together in endless chorus. To hear it was both wonder and terror, for it sounded less like the past than like eternity. Imagine yourself there, alone, torch in hand, walking through the darkened corridors. The walls loom high, the air smells faintly of iron and dust. You hear nothing at first, only your own steps. Then, softly as if from far away, the sound of footsteps not your own. You turn, but the passage is empty. The torch flickers, a gust of air brushes your cheek. The silence thickens, pressing against your ears until every shadow seems to breathe. Would you walk further, or would you run? This was the Colosseum by night, not a ruin of stone, but a living thing, its veins filled with memory, its breath a whisper of countless souls. Rome loved it, feared it, needed it. The city could not imagine itself without. And yet, when darkness fell, even the boldest remembered that glory and death are never far apart. The Colosseum was eternal, but so were its ghosts. The morning after the games, Rome itself seemed to breathe differently. The dust had not yet settled from the footsteps of tens of thousands. Scraps of food and broken cups still clung to the streets, yet the city hummed with memory. Everywhere people spoke of what they had seen. A baker in the Subura leaned across his counter, telling a customer how the Thracian fighter had nearly turned defeat into victory before falling. His words were broken by laughter as he imitated the crowd's roar. The customer shook his head, insisting another gladiator had shown greater bravery. Bread changed hands, but the true exchange was memory, moments of sand and steel carried into daily life. In a villa on the Palatine, a wealthy matron recalled the emperor's entrance. Her voice softened as she described the way the sunlight caught the purple of his cloak, how the entire arena rose in reverence. For her, the games were not only blood and sweat, but also a vision of majesty, a reminder of Rome's greatness embodied in its ruler. She told the story to her guests as if it were a sacred rite. Children reenacted the duels in the streets with wooden sticks, one falling dramatically while the others raised hands to play the crowd. Their mothers scolded them, but secretly smiled, for they too had been children once, carrying the memory of games in their own bones. This was the rhythm of Rome. Spectacle transforming into story, story weaving into identity. The Colosseum was not just an amphitheatre. It was a mirror in which the city saw itself. Did you know that poets of the age often wrote verses about the games, mixing reality with myth? A lion might be described as born from the breath of Mars, a gladiator as strong as Hercules. Ordinary events were lifted into the realm of legend, so that when Romans repeated them, they did not feel like gossip, but like epic history. The Colosseum gave Rome something to share. A farmer from the outskirts and a senator from the Forum might never cross paths otherwise, yet if both had been in the stands, they could speak the same language. The language of sand and blood, of victory and loss. In that sense, the amphitheatre was a unifier binding the many strands of the empire into one woven fabric. But not all voices agreed. There were those who muttered the arena was too cruel, that the city grew drunk on blood. Philosophers argued in quiet corners, comparing Rome's thirst for games with the pursuit of virtue, yet even they, when pressed, admitted the Colosseum was irresistible. To condemn it was to risk sounding less Roman, to step outside the circle of belonging. For Rome's citizens, identity and arena were entwined. To cheer was to be Roman. To remember the games was to carry a piece of Rome's soul. Even those who feared its ghosts, even those who whispered of omens, could not deny that the Colosseum defined them. Imagine the markets filled with voices, the air buzzing with fragments of stories, of a lion turned at the last moment. Did you see? I thought he would yield, but he fought until the end. The emperor smiled when the crowd shouted. He must have felt our loyalty. Each phrase was more than observation. It was a thread, binding people into a shared tapestry of belonging. And yet, beneath the pride, there was also unease. Some citizens wondered quietly. If the Colosseum showed Rome's glory, did it also show Rome's hunger? Did the empire's strength depend not only on discipline and law, but also on endless thirst for spectacle? The question lingered, unspoken, like the shadows under the arches. Still, identity is rarely shaped by doubt alone. Pride overwhelmed fear. To say, "I was there," was to claim membership in the great story of Rome. Even the poorest citizen could boast of having sat in the Colosseum, shoulder to shoulder with senators and merchants, watching history unfold. The amphitheatre was democracy of spectacle, where the crowd's voice could rise like thunder and sway even the emperor's hand. Foreigners, too, carried the stories. A trader from Syria returned home not only with goods, but with tales of Rome's might. A soldier from Gaul, stationed briefly in the city, wrote letters describing the roar of the crowd. Through them, the Colosseum travelled beyond Rome's walls, becoming an emblem of empire itself. Did you know that some Roman coins bore the image of the amphitheatre, tiny arches etched into silver and bronze? To hold such a coin was to hold Rome's identity, stamped into metal. The Colosseum was not only stone, it was symbol. The people of Rome felt this deeply. The arena was theirs, not only the emperor's. They filled its seats, their voices gave it life, their memories carried it beyond its walls. To walk through the Forum and see its arches looming on the horizon was to be reminded, we are Romans, and this is what it means to be Roman. And so the Colosseum lived on not only in blood spilled, but in words spoken, in pride shared, in identity forged. It became the heartbeat of the city, pulsing even when the games were over, echoing in dreams, conversations, and silences alike. The amphitheatre was Rome, and Rome was the amphitheatre. A senator, reclining at a banquet the night after the games, raised his cup of wine and boasted of his place near the emperor's dais. "I saw his gesture clearly," he declared, as servants refilled the goblets of his guests. When the gladiator faltered, the emperor's hand twitched just so. He was merciful, for he understands the people. His words were half truth, half performance. He knew that recounting what he saw tied him to power itself. To speak of the emperor's will was to borrow some of that majesty for his own voice. At another table, far from the marble halls, a poor woman sat with her children. She had taken them to the games only because bread had been distributed freely, and she could not feed them otherwise. Yet she spoke of the emperor too. She told her children he had spared a gladiator's life, that mercy had been his gift to the people. The children listened with wide eyes, their bellies full for the first time in days. For them, the emperor was not distant. He was the hand that kept their father alive in story, the hand that gave them bread. A soldier on leave, hardened by campaigns on distant frontiers, wrote a letter to his comrades. He described not the elegance of the emperor, nor the politics of mercy, but the sheer sound of the crowd. "It is like a storm rolling down from the mountains," he wrote, "a 10,000 voices shaking the ground. Even in battle I have not heard such thunder." His words travelled across provinces, carrying with them the living echo of Rome. Each person's memory shaped the Colosseum differently, yet together those fragments built the identity of a city. For the senator, it was politics. For the poor woman, mercy. For the soldier, power. For children, it was play. For poets, legend. The Colosseum was never just one thing. It was all things at once, as vast as Rome itself. Did you know that emperors sometimes ordered records of great games to be inscribed on stone or bronze, so their deeds would be remembered not only by those present, but by generations to come? These records did not capture the fear of the condemned, the smell of dust and sweat, or the tears of widows, but they ensured the arena lived on as official memory, even when the voices of the crowd had faded. Politics bled into the stories like dye into cloth. A citizen who admired the emperor's generosity retold the games as proof of his greatness. Another who resented the taxes muttered that the spectacles were nothing but distraction. Yet both spoke of the same Colosseum, both carried its weight into conversation. The amphitheatre became a stage not only for fighters but for Rome itself, every citizen a participant in the retelling. Even in small tender moments, the Colosseum lived. A father, tucking his son into bed, whispered tales of gladiators who fought bravely. He softened the blood, wrapping it in honour, shaping it into lessons. "Be strong, my son," he said. "Be like the man who fought though wounded." The boy drifted to sleep, not with fear, but with dreams of courage. An old woman, sitting by the fire, remembered her youth when the arena had first opened. She told her grandchildren how the people gasped at the sight of the marble arches, how they filled the seats with awe. Her voice cracked with age, but her eyes glowed with memory. "We thought it would last forever," she whispered, and in her telling, it did. The Colosseum was not only a building of stone, but a building of stories. Each retelling added another brick, another arch, another layer of meaning. Even when no games were held, the city lived in its shadow, speaking it into being again and again. And in this constant retelling, identity was forged. Rome was not just its laws, its legions, its roads. Rome was also its memory, its shared voice rising in the amphitheatre, its stories whispered in the markets, its pride carried in the hearts of its people. To say, "I was there," to have seen the emperor's gesture, the lion's leap, the gladiator's final bow, was to belong. The Colosseum turned ordinary men and women into witnesses of history, bearers of Rome's greatness. It made them part of something vast, something eternal. So the Colosseum lived on, not only in stone but in flesh, in voice, in memory. It was Rome's face to the world, Rome's mirror to itself, Rome's heartbeat echoing through the ages. The Colosseum's shadow did not end at its arches. It stretched into the streets, into the markets, into the very corners of the empire. To see a game in Rome was to carry a story home, and Rome's people were always on the move, merchants travelling to Antioch, soldiers returning to Gaul, envoys sailing to Alexandria. Wherever they went, the Colosseum travelled with them. In a port town on the Italian coast, sailors crowded around a tavern table. One, fresh from Rome, described the emperor's entrance at the last festival. He waved his hands wide to show the sweep of purple robes, his voice lifting to imitate the roar of the crowd. The sailors leaned in, their eyes bright. For those who had never seen the amphitheatre, his story was more than entertainment. It was a taste of Rome itself. In a dusty fort on the Danube frontier, a soldier scrawled on a wax tablet, telling his family back home of the games. He wrote not only of the gladiators, but of the crowd, of the bread handed out, of the sense that he had stood among the people of the greatest city in the world. His comrades listened as he read the letter aloud, and though they stood at the edge of empire, for a moment they felt part of its centre. Did you know that even those who never set foot in Rome might hold a coin stamped with the image of the Colosseum? To run a thumb across its tiny arches was to feel the empire's power pressed into metal, to glimpse in miniature the greatness others described in words. The amphitheatre became a symbol that crossed borders, more enduring than armies, more persuasive than laws. And yet, within Rome itself, the Colosseum was more intimate. The games ended, the blood was washed away, but the memories remained alive in conversation. Families carried them like heirlooms. Fathers told sons of the beasts they had seen. Mothers reminded daughters of the emperor's mercy. Children whispered of the gladiators who had seemed larger than life. Each story carried a tone of awe, of pride, of fear, of reverence. Together they formed a chorus, the city singing itself back into being through memory. There were festivals when Rome felt like one vast audience, its attention drawn toward the arena, as if toward a sun. Even when the games were not being held, people spoke of when they would return. The next festival, they said, would be greater still. Time itself bent around the Colosseum, the calendar of the city marked not only by seasons but by spectacles. And always the arena shaped identity. To sit in its seats was to feel Roman, whether rich or poor, whether native-born or foreigner. Even the humblest citizen could say, "I saw what all of Rome saw." That memory was a passport, proof of belonging, a stamp of identity that bound people to their city and their empire. The Colosseum was also a teacher, though its lessons were often silent. It taught courage through the sight of men who fought though wounded. It taught mercy when the emperor spared a life. It taught the fragility of existence in the roar of beasts and the cry of the condemned. For some, it taught fear. For others, resilience. For all, it taught Rome's greatness. The amphitheatre was Rome's mirror, and Rome could not look away. Imagine the city at dusk, the day after a festival. The sun sinks low, gilding the arches in soft light. Children chase each other in the streets, imitating gladiators. Merchants call out their wares, adding to the noise of gossip. Senators recline at banquets, weaving politics into their retellings. In 10,000 corners of the city, memories are alive, shaping identity, shaping belonging. And when silence falls, when the streets grow quiet, the Colosseum stands still, immense, eternal, a vessel filled not only with blood but with stories. Its arches are dark eyes watching over the city, its corridors are veins still pulsing with memory. Its sand is a page written and erased again, carrying each day into eternity. It is no wonder that Romans came to believe the amphitheatre would never end. To imagine Rome without it was to imagine a city without a heart. And so it became not just stone, but symbol, not just a building but a presence, not just entertainment, but identity itself. The Colosseum lived and Rome lived through it. But history is never still. The empire did not remain bound to its capital. Its armies marched outward, its governors ruled provinces, its culture seeped across seas, and with them travelled memory. With them travelled story. With them travelled the Colosseum itself, not in stone, but in the words and imaginations of those who carried Rome outward. Whispers of its grandeur reached distant shores. In taverns in Gaul, in marketplaces in Africa, in quiet villages along the Rhine, people spoke of the vast amphitheatre where beasts from every land met gladiators in combat. Children who had never seen Rome dreamed of it, their minds painting arches from the fragments of sailors' tales. And across the narrow sea, on an island shrouded in mist, whispers began to spread as well. Rome's legions had set foot there, carrying with them the empire's laws, its roads, its gods, and its stories. Among them were tales of the Colosseum, of the power and pride it gave to the heart of Rome. For the people of Britain, Rome would come not only as an army, but as a vision. The Colosseum would be part of that vision, a symbol of what it meant to be conquered, what it meant to be Roman, what it meant to belong to an empire so vast it could build arenas that swallowed the lives of thousands. But that is a tale for another night, For now, the Colosseum stands, its arches fading into shadow, its stories echoing in memory. And as Rome turns its gaze outward, toward new lands and new peoples, so too must we turn our story outward, toward the distant, mist-covered island where Rome's presence will one day shape centuries of history. Our next journey will be Ancient Rome in Britain, full history, 55 BC, 410 AD, boring history for sleep.